I'm Harrison with Harry's Holsters, and in this video we're going to compare the Ruger Smith & Wesson and Taurus small frame revolvers. So let's start with the caliber options for these revolvers. Smith & Wesson by far has the worst caliber options. You can pretty much get these guns only in 38, 357, and then 22 mag and 22 LR. In the past, these guns were made some 32 Magnum variants, but they're no longer in production. They cost like $2,000 on Gunbroker, so really don't like that. So Taurus and Ruger have the same amount of caliber options. You've got your 9mm, your 327 Magnum, 38, 357, 22 mag, and 22 LR. So everything out there is the same, but this is where Ruger beats Taurus in my opinion. Ruger options are actually available. You can find most of the Taurus options pretty easily, but I have not seen the 327 Magnum variants or the 22 or 22 mag variants on the market in forever. When we talk about grips, the Smith & Wesson J Frame is the clear winner of this category. The Taurus and Ruger have sufficient options, but not great. The Smith & Wesson J Frame has pretty much everything that's out there for those other two guns, and then multiply that by like 10. There's just a ton of grip options out there for the Smith & Wesson. They handle recoil, they can conceal well, whatever you want, you will be able to find it for the Smith. The Ruger grips, they're sufficient, but they're not great. And then I'm gonna put the Taurus down at the bottom just because they don't have current production grips that handle recoil as well without a little bit of modification on your part. That's where you're gonna wanna get the Hogue grips and then wrap them in goon tape if you want a best grip option for the Taurus 856 series or any of the Taurus small frame revolvers. So which revolver is the most comfortable to carry and conceals the best? All these guns have relatively lightweight options. Now, if you wanna go with a heavier gun, you're gonna be stuck with the Smith & Wesson and the Taurus because they're the only ones that make full weight steel frame guns. The steel frame guns in the LCR for the Magnum variants are still only around 18, 19 ounces, whereas the Smith & Wesson and the Taurus options get above 22 ounces. So if you're looking for a real lightweight option though, you've got the aluminum frame guns, and all these are going to be right under sub 16 ounces. Now the Smith & Wesson series also has the scandium guns. Now those are a lot more expensive, but you're going to get down close to 12 ounces if you're willing to spend the coin on those, if you're looking for just the lightest weight carry revolver possible. So which ones conceal the best? Now the Ruger LCR does not conceal the best when you compare it to the others, and the reason for that is if you look at the grip on this Ruger LCR, it's much more squared off the bottom, so it doesn't conceal well as say like this Smith & Wesson J Frame revolver. And the J Frame conceals better because it's just a very well rounded grip at the bottom, and also the distance from the bottom of this trigger guard to the top of the top strap plays a big role in both comfort and a little bit in concealment. You're just gonna be able to have a smaller package and a smaller holster with this gun, which is gonna make it more comfortable and more concealable. The Taurus 856 is somewhat of an in-between option. It conceals about as well as the J Frame and is more along the comfort lines of the J Frame. So when it comes to carry, the Ruger LCR is actually my least favorite option. That said, it's still going to conceal and carry more comfortably than most semi-autos out there on the market. So when we're talking about finish on these guns, it's going to depend on which gun you actually get because there's multiple finish options from everybody but Ruger. So the Smith & Wesson, their 442, 642, and their scandium frame guns do not have a great finish. They're going to show holster wear over time. They don't have that deep, dark luster you would expect of a classic Smith & Wesson revolver, but these are modern Smith & Wesson revolvers, not the classics. The stainless steel guns do a really good job of finish wear on the Smith & Wessons. You know, they'll get little scratches, but those can be buffed out. Now, when we go to the Ruger LCR, the finish is perfectly durable, sustainable. Doesn't look great though, and over time, it is gonna show some holster wear. The plastic grip module especially, just like a Glock wears on the trigger guard, expect that same sort of wear on your trigger guard of your Ruger LCR revolver. The worst of the bunch is definitely the Taurus series. Now these guns are also the most affordable by a long shot, so that's kind of what you can expect. These finishes are very porous. They've got a black oxide finish and a stainless steel matte finish. Those finishes, really don't care for them. They show dirt and debris a lot. They pick up everything because of how porous they are. Now they do have a Cerakote finish on some of their limited edition guns or their tallow edition guns. That finish I found to be much better, much more durable, looks a lot better in my opinion. So when it comes to loading these guns, the speed loader options are gonna be the best for the Smith & Wesson J Frame. It has the largest aftermarket out of anybody out there. An advantage of the Taurus 856 is you get that extra 6th round, and it does work with a lot of the K-frame speed loading options out there, but unfortunately, I did not find it to work with the Comp 2 or Safari Lane Comp 1 or my jet loader. When we're comparing the Ruger LCR to the Taurus series, the Ruger LCR is going to have the exact same options as the Taurus, which really means the 5-star speed loader and the HKS speed loader are going to be your 2 best options. Depending on which direction you like the knob to turn is going to depend on which one will work better for you. The HKS, I don't like the direction the knob turns, but it holds the rounds a lot tighter, which is nice. The 5-star, the rounds shake quite a bit, but the knob turns in a better direction. Now, if you're looking for just like speed strips, non-mechanical loaders, Zeta 6 makes options for all these guns. You've got all your old school Bianchi style strips and your tough products. So pretty much equal there. So maintenance. Maintenance is pretty much equal on all these guns. You're just gonna have to run a bore snake through it, use a little bit of oil, clean the cylinders out, clean the barrel out, and then brush the guns down around their stars and the forcing cone of the gun. Just keep it clean. Maintenance is really simple on these. Remember, revolvers are good with neglect, but they are not good with abuse, so you do want to keep them clean. So hammer setups. I think this is important, especially for concealed carry guns. I personally prefer a hammerless design or a design that has the hammer enclosed within inside the frame. You can get this with the Ruger LCR, and then like the Smith & Wesson 642, 442, the 640 series. Most of these guns have an enclosed hammer option. Taurus, unfortunately, does not. All their hammers are exposed. They do have some bobbed hammers, so you can get double action only guns in the Taurus, but that's not the same as an exposed hammer because you can still get a finger or a thumb or something behind that hammer and keep it from operating the gun. If you're a fan of double action, single action revolvers, all of these guns are gonna be equal because you've got the LCR-X series from Ruger where they make all the same calibers as they do with the LCR. And then you've also got these similar circumstances with the Smith & Wesson series. The only gun that they don't have an analog for is the 2-inch 640 Pro because they do not have a 2-inch double action, single action gun that has dovetail sights. So when we talk about the triggers on these guns, the Smith & Wesson trigger, in my opinion, in general tends to be the best. There's lots of variations in all these manufacturers and their triggers. So you might get a gun that has an absolutely excellent trigger on the Taurus, but then the Smith you pick up might not be that good. But in general, I find the Smiths generally tend to have a little bit better of a trigger. Now, one thing about these Smith triggers is, you can see this gun is unloaded. It has a very positive reset. And so if you're a semi-auto shooter used to shooting short reset striker fire triggers, this is a great option because you're not gonna have to worry about short stroking the trigger. Same with the Taurus 856. The Taurus 856 also has that very positive reset that you're not gonna have to worry about short stroking. Now the Ruger LCR, on the other hand, does not have that positive reset. So short stroking is definitely gonna be a concern. I don't suggest getting this gun unless you're willing to do a lot of training if you have a lot of experience shooting semi-auto pistols. If you're used to double action, single action guns and a heavy, long trigger pull, this gun's gonna work great for you. Now, when we talk about the quality of the trigger pull themselves, the one gripe I've got with this Taurus gun is the Taurus feels quite stagey. It feels like the finish almost needs to break in, and that's after firing this, dry firing it thousands of times and giving it time to break in. But it's still pretty darn close to the Smith & Wesson stock triggers. Your best trigger out of all these is going to be either an older Ruger LCR, those tend to have really good triggers, or a Performance Center Smith & Wesson. Now, when we talk about sight picture, that again is going to depend on the model of gun you're running. So the Ruger LCR is going to be the most consistent because all the 1.87-inch barreled LCRs and the LCR-Xs are gonna have this identical sight setup of just a standard rear trough with a pinned-on front sight. There are some options to replace the front sight that are pretty decent, but these are pretty mediocre, middle-of-the-road revolver sights. Now, when you get to the Smith & Wesson series, you're gonna have everything from these milled-in machine front sights, which are really mediocre, don't work. All you can do is paint the front sight if you want to improve them, to versions that have dovetailed front and rear sights, as well as a version that has a standard milled rear sight, but it has a pinned front sight. I actually like the pinned front sights the best on the Smith & Wessons. I don't know why, but I seem to shoot them the most accurately. And for a combat style sight picture, the big white round dots with this rear trough just tends to be very accurate and very quick to acquire. For the price point, most Taurus revolvers are pretty darn good. They do have some lower end models that just have regular milled in sights, again, where you can just paint the front sight. And then they also have these versions with the pinned in front sight. For a sub $400 revolver, the pinned front sight is definitely an advantage. And if you're not running the night sights, you can actually change the sight height by buying different blade heights off Ruger's website. So you can dial the gun in so you'll have the correct point of aim, point of impact with your chosen carry ammo. I'm gonna give the winner here to Smith & Wesson just because of the sheer number of options they have, being able to put dovetailed sights in, and I just really like the setup they've got with their pin front sights, but understand that comes at a huge cost. So now let's compare recoil on these three different series of guns. The Ruger LCR is going to be the most consistently lightest because it's only 18 ounces with the steel frame, and this version right here is sitting around 15 ounces with the aluminum. The recoil on these is pretty darn manageable if you have the right grip. These tamer grips do an excellent job. Some of the other grips options, which we've covered in our Ruger LCR specific review, don't do as good of a job with recoil management. The Taurus 856 and the 605, 905, etc. don't have as many good grip options. Right here, I've got a set of Uncle Mike's discontinued grips that work excellent, but these are no longer made. So you're gonna have a hard time hunting these down. Now you can throw a set of Hogues on it, wrap them in goon tape, and they're serviceable, but they're not gonna be as good as the options on the LCR and the J Frame. So recoil wise, I'm gonna say the most pleasant two guns to shoot, believe it or not, are the J Frame and the LCR. If you want to get the most soft recoiling gun out of any of these, I found that the Smith & Wesson 640 or a Model 60 3-inch are going to just be the softest guns to shoot for a revolver that is this small. So price point's a really important thing to a lot of people. And the price point of these revolvers varies quite drastically. The Taurus guns are anywhere from $300 to $400 most places. The Smith & Wesson J Frames go from about $500 to $1,200. So there's a very large range there in what you get and what you get for your money. The Ruger LCRs, depending on if you get a standard pressure variant or a Magnum variant, go from $500 to $700. So they're kind of the middle ground as far as price point goes. So lastly, we're gonna cover reliability. And I had a lot of issues with Taurus. I've bought 4 Taurus revolvers. I've bought 3 of those within the past year, and I have had to send 2 of those back to the factory to get fixed. I wish I could say Smith & Wesson was a lot better, but I handled 3 Smith & Wesson 442s a couple of weeks ago when I purchased mine, and 2 of them, there's no way to watch out the shop with them. The triggers were absolutely horrible. The finish had a bunch of unnecessary dings on it for a brand new manufactured revolver. Even mine had a little bit of a ding, but it's something I can live with because it is a carry gun. Now the Ruger LCR might be the exception to that. The Ruger LCR is a modern revolver. Look at it. It was designed, I believe, around 2006, 2008 timeframe, and it was designed for modern manufacturing. The Taurus 856 and then the Smith & Wesson J Frame were designed at a time when gunsmiths would put everything together. Sure, these have been updated since then, but the basis of the design is an old school, old world design. So I think buying the Ruger LCR is just gonna be a little bit more of a sure bet from a reliability standpoint. Now, if you get a good one of these, you know, a J Frame or a Taurus 856, Taurus small frame revolver, you're gonna have a good one. You're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna work well for you. But if you get a bad one, you're likely gonna be dealing with a warranty department. I hope you guys have found this video helpful, and I hope it gives you the knowledge you need to take charge and carry with confidence.